It's Timothy. I'm always glad to be with you. And I don't say that lightly. I mean that from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate you as you listen to the things that God has prepared within me to give to you. I believe it'll bring change. And I want to talk about some things that I believe that will help you. You know, the thing about money is that it requires money to do everything. I originally remember when Donna and I took a vow of poverty, and we found out really quick, this is the early part of the ministry, because we didn't want money to get in our way of anything that would do with God. In other words, if it would cause some type of stumbling block with the Lord, then we didn't want that in our way. Thinking that poverty then was some type of epitome of life was being, in poverty. Come to find out that when you read the scriptures and find out that Abraham was blessed above all, and the way they knew he was blessed was because he owned all the cattle and owned all the silver and he owned everything. And that's how they determined in the Old Testament if you were blessed or not. If God then was blessing you, you were financially prospering. And so we had to change our mindset because we realized really quickly that it took money to live on. It took money to pay the rent, took money to, pay for the car. The car was always having problems. We're going through those kind of cycles of mechanical things working. Not only that, the children were growing. They were growing their clothes. And at the very beginning, we were only living on about $400 a month. Well, we'd saved a little bit up from when we worked in the sawmill, but that went very quickly because it doesn't take long to work towards that. And so what I want to talk about is when the things in Deuteronomy, the 8th chapter, it says, as you read Deuteronomy, the 8th chapter, verse 18, but thou shalt remember, let me read verse 17. Thou wilt say in thine heart, my power and the might of my hand have got me this wealth. That's what people will say, because when you're working for God and you're doing things, you have to work with your hands. And so, but thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is he that giveth thee power to get wealth, that he may establish his covenant, which he swore unto your fathers. In other words, God is the one that gives you the power to gain wealth. And so then thou hast to do something. God does not counterfeit money. There's no money that's going to appear in your bank account. There's no money he's going to rain down from heaven, because there's no money in heaven. And you say, well, he could make it. He's not a counterfeiter. He doesn't copy. He doesn't cheat. But what he does do is he shows you where the money is. Just like he told Peter and them, they had to pay their taxes. And what does he tell them? Go catch the first fish and take the coin out of the fish's mouth and pay the taxes. Well, God will show you where the coin is. He'll show you where the money is. Just like he will show you the Solomon principle about multiplying things. And so as you read out of Joshua then, going to Deuteronomy, the 8th chapter that I read out of there a while ago, verse 17. This is Joshua, the first chapter. And it's so important to read after Joshua because God gives you the secret to success. It says this book of the law, and we found out in the John's Gospel, the 13th chapter, that all the law is fulfilled in loving your neighbor. So you keep the law of commandments of forgiveness, loving your neighbor, blessing those that curse you, pray for those that misuse you, those that would say bad things. The curse you meant they weren't using God's name in vain when they were cursing you. I mean, they were just trying to stop your work. They were trying to kill whatever you were doing. Sometimes you think the word cursing is somebody uses the word name God, and they use it with the word damnation, which you're trying to get God to damn something. And some people in the South, they use the word damn as an exclamation point. Close that, that window, and they use the word damn with it, okay? And they were not cussing, but it was an exclamation point. I don't use that myself, but I'm just simply telling you that when you put God's name with it, you're trying to get God to damn something. What you're trying to do is to get him to bring damnation on it. And the reason it's an abomination is because God doesn't do that. You can't get God to do it. So God's not going to curse you. He doesn't want you to curse nobody. He's commanding. You don't get God upset. Then start trying to get God to curse somebody. And that's where the God's name in vain is. We use God's name in vain. They say God, and then they use the word damn, with that. What they're saying is trying to get God to damn something, okay? Trying to get him to curse it. And you can't get God to curse it. That's why it's an abomination, okay? The curse is there because of what Adam had done, but God redeemed us from the curse of the law out of Galatians 3:13. Christ hath redeemed us from the curse of the law, okay? You've been redeemed from it. So here we find out in Joshua that we read, okay, you shall meditate there night and day. In other words, out of God's word. Just spend time in God's word. That's all you got to do. You get to hear God's voice that way. And then he said, for then thou shalt make thy way prosperous, and thou have good success. So then how will you become prosperous? Thou hast to go do something. Without thou doing something, thou cannot succeed. So when we didn't have no toilet paper, we didn't have no food, we were living, it was a terrible time, okay? That's all I got to say about it. Now all I was doing was obeying God. I'd been traveling in the ministry, and the Lord dealt with me about stop traveling. And when I traveled, the finances were good, everything was flowing, we were just doing very well. And then when the Lord dealt with me to stop traveling, which I obeyed, I was tempted to go back to traveling, just like I would have been tempted maybe to go to work somewhere, decrease the areas of finances, but I needed to hear what God would tell me to do. So I understood then God began to deal with me. He says, if you'll listen to me in a non-religious way, I'll show you how to get out of this and how to succeed financially. And that's exactly what I made a decision to do. So my daughter and son-in-law, my son-in-law was going into the military. He'd been in the military, but then he went through college and got some degrees, and he retired as a colonel out of the Air Force. So he done fairly well, okay, in the medical field. He done very well in those areas. But when they got ready to go in the military, him and my daughter had this old pickup that was blue, and I don't know if you remember the Fords or not, but they would sort of fade out. And so we took that old Ford pickup and sanded it down, painted it, made it look really good, and sold it and made some money. And then we took that money and we bought a piece of equipment. We bought a carpet cleaning machine. It was not a very good one, but we bought it, okay? And then we had a friend to teach us how to clean carpet. Now, we've got to remember, we had no money whatsoever. The bills were stacking high. And so we went down to the dollar store and bought stuff to clean carpet with, okay? And then we went over to the place to where people restaurants buy their food from. They also have chemicals and things like that. They had some optical enhancers, so when you clean the carpet, it literally looked good. And so he taught us about how to use a little bit of meat degreaser. You take meat degreaser, it'll actually ruin and void your carpet. We didn't know that at the time, but he was teaching us how to clean carpet with this little portable machine. And you take something that strong, you can take meat degreaser in cold water, and it'll strip whatever's in there out, okay? So it makes the carpet look good. And then if you use the optical enhancers, I'm not going to go through the process of, fluorocarbons and all the different common things as far as, the Teflons and stuff like that, with the dye receptors. I'm not going to go into that part of it. But I will say that we found out we were cleaning carpet fairly well. We actually were making the carpet look very well, okay? It was looking very good. And not knowing that after you use that stuff after 3 or 4 times, it makes the carpet dyes, and the carpet fiber, then the dye receptors filled up with that junk, and then you got to strip it out, okay? So about every 3rd or 4th time, you got to strip it out, but then it makes it look good. Well, we made $38,000 in a little over 3 months, okay? Here we went from making no money whatsoever to making $38,000 in 3 months with a little tiny carpet cleaning machine. And we went around and, go to the restaurants and say, we'll clean the carpets. We used their hot water, and we had learned which chemicals to use, okay? And restaurants, they weren't worried about the warranty on their carpets anyway. Some of them were Oriental restaurants and different kind of restaurants, and some of them hadn't had carpet cleaned in years, and you could tell it. It was black, okay? And we would go into that little carpet cleaning machine, use those, chemicals. As I said, you could take degreaser, meat degreaser, and you could put that on anything and strip it down even with cold water. Well, we were cleaning carpets, but we made $38,000 in a little over 3 months. Okay, that's what got us started in moving on up into the areas of business. Sound like the Jeffersons here, moving on up. Okay, so then we got into some other areas of cleaning. We started detailing homes out. We went to work for real estate companies, and then we started painting homes. Okay, we hated painting homes. Okay, I hated painting homes. I do not like to paint. I can paint, but I do not like to paint. Now, I understand paints because when I was working in the sawmill, one of the things that I had to learn to do was because of one particular area, we learned paints and understand the viscosities and the different kinds of the qualities of paints. And so anyway, was painting homes. Okay, we hated that, but we were making money at it. And then we started detailing homes out like you detail a car out, just like you would detail a car out to take a car, and you go send it to somewhere and they detail it out. Now, we got some friends that own a detailing shop. So they would take a car out, and I was like, oh, God, how do you do all that? Are you down there with toothpicks? And he laughed, and both of them laughed. They owned it. And they said, no, come here. So they took this little spray bottle, and and they sprayed in there with that air nozzle, and they sprayed a little bit like inside the vents, and they used that air nozzle, and it cleaned it right up and made it look like you would have scrubbed it for hours. Like, whoa, okay, that's pretty good. Well, we realized, okay, we were going to detail homes out. God gave us that name, detailing specialist. We began to detail homes out for the real estate companies, and we would charge them $1,000 a house. Well, we'd go over there, Daniel, my son, and Donna, my wife, the three of us would go over there, go and clean a house out. Now, we wouldn't do it if anybody lived in it because they wanted a house clean. So we'd go clean the carpets, clean the windows, and Donna Marie would take this stuff, this shiny stuff, over the cabinetry, and then she'd go to the bathrooms, do the same thing, clean out the tubs and the showers, and then wipe that stuff on it. We found out what we found out about chemicals. We found out that chemicals clean really well. It didn't take a lot of scrubbing. We learned how to do it from our friends doing like detailing cars out. You use the right chemicals. In fact, you can take certain chemicals and make stains disappear. Now, stains are like dyeing your hair. You get your hair dyed. You're not going to get it undyed. So sometimes the carpets get dyed with stains, but there are certain chemicals that will make them go away for 3 or 4 months. That's what you got to be aware of when you buy used cars. There's guys that know how to make those stains remove for about 3 or 4 months, and then all of a sudden you buy this used car, you're driving down the road, and you look, oh my God, what's over there on the floorboard? A big stain starts to come back because somebody used the right chemicals. Well, we found out how to use chemicals, okay? Chemicals were our friend. Not really, but I'm just simply saying that we found out that we'd go in and we would leave the house, the carpet be clean. We would take these little bags of deodorizers and we'd put them down in the vents. And so when they turned the vents on, the air conditioner, the heating, the house smelled good. Just like if you went and had your car detailed at a car lot, you go in, it's going to smell right, it's going to look good, there's nothing that's going to turn you off. Well, we had a lot of work to do. I mean, there was just, God gave us insight about how to go do those things. But we had to do the Joshua thing and the Solomon thing. Everything that you put your hands to will prosper. Then thou hast to go do something. Thou hast to go do something. And a lot of times what people want God to do is they want him to come and bless them. Come and bless me. Just start giving me money. But what we found is more we put our hands to it, more we were blessed. So we would have to go put our hands to different things. And so then we ended up started running and owning some different kinds of companies, like a pest control company, a restaurant, a janitorial company, a hard floor division company, a construction company, a timber company, an excavating company. We started running all these companies. Okay, so once we got started down this path, we pulled the Solomon principle, and that is we multiplied. We would make it grow, would make it work. And there are certain businesses that we hated, we didn't like. We hated the restaurant, but we wanted a fine dining restaurant. I mean, it was very popular. It was very, candlelight and all the things and flambés at the table side. I think we were the only restaurant in Oregon at that time was doing flambés, and the reason why is because of the liability. Somebody was always getting their hair scorched. Primarily the waitresses that were learning how to do. Here I am trying to flip it and show you how to do it. I can't show you how to do a flambé. Okay, to flip it and get it on fire and flip it back and forth and look a little creative there. Somebody come to celebrate their, some type of anniversary or some type of something that they were celebrating, and then they would order like cherry jubilee or banana foster, whatever it was, and we'd come to the table side, light that thing up, and do it, and it was quite an area. Well, that just brought more business in. God gave us insight about how to do those kind of things. How to, even if it was a restaurant, we bought like meat that had been harvested. We bought Angus, which was a lot of marbling, which just means it had a lot of fat. We would harvest it at the age of, it was aged of 2 years, and then they would let it set for 28 days at 32 degrees. It was aged. You could cut it with a fork. Okay, it's the kind of meat you'd pay $300 for. Well, everything that we set our hands to, God would just give us the information about how to go do it. But we had to go do something, and it required a lot of work. It required a lot of time. So what happens is with somebody that has understands wealth, you give them $100,000 and they'll turn it into $300,000 or $400,000. You give somebody who doesn't understand $100,000 and they'll go buy the car, pay the house down, whatever. What you do is you learn to buy a house and you let somebody else pay for it. You find a cheap house. I have friends who've done this. I don't know if you can buy cheap houses today or not, but back a few years ago, you could buy a cheap house and then rent it out and let the renters pay for it. And then just like I had a good friend, he come to him and he said, well, what could I do for a business? I said, there's a lot of money in window cleaning. He's like, well, Tim, there's no money in window cleaning. There's nothing in there. I'm just telling you, if you want to, I said, you can make money doing anything. That's what we found out in God. But thou has to go do something. And so pretty soon he had the largest window cleaning company in Klamath Falls because he was cleaning windows on the larger contracts, okay? And what we found is that you have to, of course, obviously you have to learn how to clean windows, a little bit of Dawn soap and, a teaspoon of that and a gallon of water or whatever. And because Dawn soap has this wax in it, that's why everything sparkles when you see it. Good window cleaners have wax in it. Okay, so that's why somebody comes along, they're going to use like newspaper and wipe it off and it smears because one of us guys have come along and used wax to clean windows. Well, this was the things that we were doing in business-wise, and we were enjoying this. When you get paid good for doing something, it was really a thrill. Donna was out working. Donna and I would go to work sometime before daylight, and then we would work till about lunch, come home, eat a little bit of lunch, and about 3 or 4 o'clock, we'd start back and not get off till midnight. We were out working, but we were enjoying ourselves. There's something about when you're working, the fulfillment of that, and especially when you're receiving a larger paycheck. There's something about that. And so we were willing to go work. A lot of people, what they want God to do is they want God to ride up on a big white horse, take a big stick and beat their debtors about half to death, and then hand them a bag of money so they don't ever have to trust God again. God will never let you get into a place where you don't have to trust Him. Every day we had to trust God in our finances. Every day we had to say what God said about us. That is, He became poor that we might be made wealthy. Well, again, we weren't doing those, and then eventually, you've heard me talk about it. I was in Los Angeles, California, had just went to a convention. Donna and I were sitting in the airport, and this voice that was loud says, we've had fun making money. And I turned around to see who was talking to me. And, again, I thought, okay, maybe it's God, okay, because it was a loud voice. I've had God speak to me a number of times that way. And again, the voice said, almost like you're hearing it off the PA, coming off the, we've had fun making money, haven't we? And then I recognized it was God. And I said, instantly, then I looked around, nobody was there but Donna and I, and she didn't have a man's voice. It was a man's voice. And I said, we have had fun making money. I just said it out loud. We have had fun making money. I'm sure somebody had seen me, thought I was talking into the air. But yes, we have had fun. We have had fun making money. He said, okay, it's time to stop and put your hand back to the plow. Okay, so I'm called to do that. Okay, not everybody's called to do business. It takes you've got to have some gumption. You've got to get up and walk out on the edge. You've got to be willing to go do things where other people won't go through that. And so what it takes is a willingness to trust God, but then you've got to go do something. So this is what I said with most people. If someone gave you $1 million, this is what happened to a lot of people back in the 50s and 60s. The government come along and give them $200,000 or $300,000, and then they don't know what to do with it. They go buy a house and a car, and start paying a few bills off. You give somebody money who understands money, and they will start to make money with that money. That money is to make money with money. That's how you make money. And see, we started with nothing, but we had to go work. So we had all these different companies that we were running. We'd go do this, and in the beginning, we'd go do it ourselves to learn how to do it, and then we'd find somebody and then train somebody how to go do that job. We would go through the process of working out the bugs. We call it get the bugs out of it. We'd work it out through the process. I can remember being there over in Grundy, Virginia. Nobody knew that I was there. I was there with my good friend Covey Elkins on the side of a mountain over there with a bunch of copperheads. Okay, that's what I remember. Is that pretty close? We were pretty close up to the West Virginia state line. And all I remember is, we were wearing snake leggings, okay? I don't know if it was worth it or not. We were cutting timber for the Japanese, okay, selected timber. I don't know if I would ever want to go and be involved in that again. There was just too many copperheads, okay? Just too many. You couldn't turn around without having snakes all over everywhere. It's like that. I didn't realize there would be so many copperheads, okay? We decided we were not going out in the field anymore. We just let our guys go work, and we'll go off and doing what we were doing. But this is the kind of things that you've got to be willing to do. You've got to be willing to put your hands to something. You say, I can't do that. I never paint any at all professionally. I still drive by buildings today to make sure the paint's still on the building, okay? And I remember the one truck that we painted. I drive by to make sure the paint was still on that truck 20 or 30 years later. They had one big white truck I painted that we bought and sold. We buy these trucks that then do whatever and then paint them, whatever. We got into this process. You can make money doing a lot of things. There's many things you could do to make money to clean, just like cleaning carpet, okay? That's what we got started on. Then pretty soon we got building houses back. And then, we're working for Lowe's. I don't know if you know Lowe's, the lumber company and, retailer that sells everything, appliances and everything like that. We went to work for them. And at the time, I was sitting in my office, and I sent a couple of my guys over. They wanted to talk to me, so I sent a couple of guys over. And Lowe's had bought this what we call a company that done houses that had been burned or whatever, reconstruction and work on the houses like that. And I had tried to get on this program with this one particular company, and they just said, well, you haven't been doing this longer enough. You've only been doing it 3 years. We need you to be doing it 5 years. We own the franchise. Now, we've been doing it longer than that, but we didn't have a company that we could show them that we had been doing it longer because we used different company names for different things. And so I remember I jumped up and I went over there, and the guy that was in charge, he said, no, we bought that company. We own that company that you tried to get on. I said, well, that's amazing. So him and I got to talking, and we talked about the school. He went to the same school that my daughter did, about 2 years ahead of her, and we laughed, we hollered. My two supervisors that I sent over, they just went back to the shop because they realized me and him, we walked around that store. We had a great time. He said, hey, get on back over to the office. I said, well, they wouldn't let me on. He said, get back to your office over there. And then he said, how much money do you think is going to take? You're going to do 5 homes at a time. They'd give us 5 homes that this big, large bank company, I can't mention the name of it, a large banking system across America, would repo these homes. And this was especially right after 2008, 2009, 2010. There was a huge, people lost their homes and things like that. It was terrible, and these larger banks owned them back. They took them back, and they repoed the homes. And then what we done is this big banking company would give us 5 homes to do. And as soon as we done those 5 homes, they give us 5 more. That was a lot of work to do. Okay, we done everything from replacing the roof, replacing the windows, replacing the door. Now, what did I do? I never done any of that. What I did is I hired people that knew how to do that. Now, I can swing a hammer, but nobody swings a hammer anymore. They use pneumatic nailers. Okay, so, but I had to be willing to go out there on a line to do that. I had to be willing to go out there on the line to go do that. I can remember we would have houses, have these huge, homes. Some of them were huge homes. Some of them were very expensive homes. We'd have that house tore all to pieces. Okay, it's like, oh God, okay. God, you got to help me get this house back together, okay? I don't want nobody to see how bad it is, okay? This house is, we're putting it back together. And that's like most things. After you go into a house, once you get the drywall looking good, the house is going to look pretty good. But we were smart enough to hire like cabinetry people, but this were the things that we were doing. We just kept doing that. And then finally God got a hold of me and stopped me and I enjoyed it. I have to be honest. I was enjoying myself. Donna was enjoying herself. She'd be off running crews. I'd be off doing crews. Daniel would be off doing crews. We'd all be doing what we do. And primarily my job was to oversee the production and sales. I had 3 salespeople that worked for me full time just in one company. And so they had their cars, their vehicles. I put GPSs on them so I could sit there and watch to make sure they were doing what they were supposed to be. And we were operating on those bases. But we didn't start there. We started with no toilet paper. We started eating where we were eating rice. We had no food. But I will tell you that, hunger is the mother of invention, okay? When you have things, when you don't have anything to eat and you have bills that are stacking up, we were willing to put these hands to work, and that's what we did. We had to put our hands to work. And there was at times, and, we weren't able to, a lot of times people say, well, I can't do this and I can't do that. We can't use that card. I never used that card. My back won't let me, my hand won't let me. We don't use that card, or I don't feel good. I can remember I heard people immediately out of the church, and then they couldn't show up. And then they'd say, I can't show up. You knew when you hired me I was crazy, Pastor. It's like, if you don't go do that job, I'm going to fire you, okay? Because that means I've got to go do it. Well, I can't do it. I'm just emotionally upset. I don't care if you're emotionally upset or not. Get your bod back out there, okay, and go get the job. And we found out, but we use people all the time that needed help. But we found out a lot of times with the area of the Christians that we knew is like, well, I'm having trouble. You can't play that card with me. You're working for us. It means you've got to go to work if you feel like you want to work or not. And that's what I did in the sawmill. I can remember staggering into the sawmill running the temperature. I didn't tell them I was running the temperature because I needed the money. Okay, I couldn't play the card, I can't do this. I didn't play the card, I don't feel like doing this. I couldn't play those cards. I had to go do what I needed to do. Anyway, I'm not saying that I am the epitome of success, but I'm simply telling you that you've got to be willing to go do something if you're going to prosper in the kingdom of God. I'm writing a book on business, and so it'll be great to tell you about marketing and sales, all those kind of different areas, things that God wants his people to own. I remember God dealt with me. I want you to own these things. I want you to succeed. And what I found was it was much easier for me to obey God when I had the prosperity. He'd tell me to go do something, I could go do it. He'd say, go do this, and I'd go do this. He'd say, go, help this, and I'd go help this person, or go do whatever I needed to do. And the reason for that was the finances was so he could establish his covenant through me. So if you want to prosper, really prosper, then you've got to be willing to say, God, I don't know if I can do business or not. I don't know if I can do those kind of things. And you might not be called to do it. So don't feel condemned if you can't. But God is still able to cause men to give into your bosom. He can still bless you. He can still prosper you. But you got to learn how to believe him. I've enjoyed. Let me say hi to Joshua. I seen that you got on really quick, and Brandy. I was praying for you guys today, and Meyer. Pray for you and Bill. Appreciate that. And Maria, I pray for you. And Janet, I pray for you. And then John, pray for you. I appreciate that. I appreciate you guys being on. And again, I don't want you to make you think that, we are the epitome of success and done whatever. But I do want you to know that you got to be willing to go do something. And because God's not going to rain the money down from heaven. He's not going to cause your bank account to explode because he doesn't do things illegally. But he'll show you how to prosper. That's if you're willing to do it, he'll show you how to do that. I've enjoyed being with you. I appreciate you being with me. We're going to continue this on finances. I believe it'll bring change to you if you'll listen to it. Okay, thank you very much.